All right, another question. This one is from Beck. Not the Beck in our class. I think it's the one who wrote Devil's Haircut, actually. And the answer is because the government thinks that the airwaves are public. How come the government can restrict free speech on the radio? All right, that's a good question when you think about it. The government doesn't restrict free speech in print, the newspapers, magazines, books. They can't tell newspapers what not to print. That's called prior restraint. But since the beginning of radio and television, there have been restrictions on what can be said, the dirty words on radio, racy, violent images to some extent on certain kinds of television programs. The government has gotten into restricting, meddling, censoring the broadcast airwaves ever since the Radio Act of 1927. Look that one up in your textbook. It might be on the final exam. The Radio Act of 1927 was passed, and the government felt like they needed to come in and regulate radio stations because radio stations were springing up independently all over the country with no restrictions on what frequency they broadcast on, how much power they put out, and the stations were all interfering with each other. And the government used that as an excuse to say, we need clear signals, we don't want 3 radio stations all on the same band, so we're going to come in and create a variety of laws. And it went to the Supreme Court, and guess what? The courts, they decided that the public owns the airwaves. Therefore, the government does have the right to regulate what's broadcast on the airwaves. Now, there's an interesting twist to this. The regulation that you see on the public airwaves does not exist if the broadcast signal is delivered to you through a cable. So cable television, for instance, you'll see all sorts of things on cable television, strong language and sexual scenes and all sorts of things that the government would like to regulate if it was on the broadcast airwaves. But going all the way back to the Radio Act of 1927, that's what gave the government the excuse to come in and censor radio and television. Very good question, Beck. That will be on the final exam. I like that song about the Devil's Haircut.